Hello and welcome to the Jewelers Academy podcast. I'm your host this week, Anna Campbell, and today I'm really excited to be talking with Alison Hughes about the things that hold us back in business and sometimes things that we're not even aware of. So, we're going to really delve into some of that psychology side, which you know I love, and getting into where we get stuck and how we can get unstuck. Alison Hughes is a counsellor working with women from burnout to breakthrough, with over a decade of experience working in various health trusts and private counselling. Alison now specialises in working with women who recognise that they are far from where they want to be and want help to get there fast. So, welcome, Alison. It's lovely to have a chance to chat with you.
Oh, hi, Anna. I'm really excited just to be here and chat with you about this today because it's something I really feel passionate about. So it's great. Delighted to be here. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. No, I think this is something that so many people, if not everyone, resonates with. So I think it's going to be good to kind of delve into it a little bit more. So I guess the first thing to say, and this is for everyone to think about really, but like what kinds of issues can come up for people in business? Why does selling our jewelry feel so hard sometimes?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I suppose whenever we're looking at that, whenever somebody would come to me, for instance, to look at what's going on for them, the first question I'd be asking them is, well, what do you want? Because people know what they don't want. They come up with that. That's what their statements are. Well, I don't want this, and this is what's happening for me. And I'm like, well, what do you want? So we create that. We create that scene and whenever I think about people in business, they're absolutely brilliant because they've got that creativity and they're absolutely amazing at creating that because it's something I couldn't do. So to watch somebody assemble and create a piece of jewelry is just fantastic, just to see that. But then we have to look about, well, what's happening for them, in their business, what's going on in their business. So they're really good at what they can sell or create, but are they actually selling it? So where's
Yeah,
the
I
block?
think that's so true. I think with a lot of people, artists, creatives, handmakers, that's where the joy of it is. That's what they love doing. It's that creative side of it. But we know that if we want to make a living from it or a business from it, we need to also kind of transition or do those other things, the business related things. And I think we live we're very fortunate in the times that we live in that we do have that opportunity to do that. In the past, you'd need a patron or you'd need to get into a shop or a gallery, which, is still an option now, but we have more options to be able to share about our art and about our jewelry and sell our own work much more
Yeah,
widely to a global audience. But I think that brings its own challenges and things that can come up for us,
yeah,
because the creativity is the fun bit, and the marketing and the selling and the things like that.
yeah,
It's another thing, isn't it?
absolutely. And it's so important what you've just said because you've just said there's a shop front. And if somebody walks into your shop front, they're walking into your shop and then you can greet them. So they've done the hard part by walking in. But whenever you look at this, if we've got this whole new way of selling, it means that you now have to be the person that's going to show up, that's going to be visible and to talk and to sell and to market and to look at your systems and your processes. And that's completely separate from creating. And I had a really good scenario just the other day. And I'm just going to use this one for us because I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Somebody shared on online the other day whenever I was in a forum, I was just talking and listening. And they said you're going to create a meeting and you're the CEO of your business and you're going to bring in all of your team members, which is your salesperson, your marketing person, your strategy person, your processes person, and you're going to bring them all into the meeting and you're planning. So you're going to bring them all in and you're going to ask them one by one, what's the marketing strategy? What's your sales strategy? What's your processes strategy? And each one of them are going to go, I don't know. There's nothing in the pipeline, there's nothing planned. So what would you do? Well, first of all, you're thinking, these guys or these girls or whatever, are they good enough for my team? Should they be in this team? And I want you to think about you as yourself, like being that each of those members. So whenever you think, am I showing up in each of those little departments, or what needs to happen, what needs to change? So the first thing I would say is the planning stage. You've got this vision for your business, and you want to sell it to lots and lots of different people. That's your vision. And sometimes people think that's the easy part. So then once that's done and they've put time and effort and lots of time, maybe and money in creating that, well, then what next? But how do you even know that that person, that market is ready for your piece? So what market research have you done? So there's so many different elements to business. So many.
I think so. And I think we have to give ourselves permission not to be the beginner. Because I think sometimes when we learn our craft, we learn our jewelry making and we practice and we do the beginners things and then we build on our skills. And it's the same for business, but I think we judge ourselves. We're like, oh, I don't know how to do this yet. Well, no, maybe we don't know how to do this. And maybe that's absolutely correct that we don't know how to do this because we're living in a completely all of us are living in a new world from the world that we're in as children, whatever age you are, because the world is changing and moving so quickly.
Mhm.
And we just need to give ourselves a little bit of grace, I think, to just say, if you don't know, that's absolutely fine. We also live in a world where we can find out these things. It's much easier to do that too. So,
Yeah. And that's exactly right, Anna, because if you're starting into a new business, like even if you're transitioning from a different field into this field, in this creative field, and it's something completely new for you, you have to exactly think, now the learner again. I'm the student again. And this is what I do know. And it's not going into that big picture of all of these different parts right now, because if you're in this for the long term and you think, well, that's the big goal, that's the big vision, well, then I always think about then how you bring it back into the right now and not staying in the big picture, because sometimes that can create overwhelm, and it can keep us stuck. So whenever you think, I'm just the beginner right now and I get to those different stages whenever I need it, well, then we'll move there, we'll move slowly. And as you say, with compassion and kindness, we'll move into those different parts. We'll not be criticizing or critical, of ourselves.
yeah, absolutely. And, you talk a lot about parts. So what are you meaning by parts and parts of ourselves? I'm sure everyone can relate to this.
Yeah. And just before I come on, I just thought, well, let's write out a few parts, that, I might work with people whenever they come into the room. And a lot of them, well, first of all, to say, well, what is a part? People might know, like I've just mentioned, student, learner. That's a part of us, because we're not just a student. We might be a mother, a daughter, a son, whatever. Um, So whenever I talk about parts, I am listening to their story, what's keeping them stuck, first of all. And I want to know what their big vision is. And I will be doing an assessment with them to hear, perhaps, maybe, right, going back, we'll create that story, we'll go into that story of the past, and we'll hear, what it was like for them whenever they were growing up, who was influencing them growing up. So mother, father, siblings, churches, any significant influences that were in their lives as young people. And it's so interesting because people do not realize how much they're programmed. Like, for instance, whenever you think about a baby learns how to cry and it gets fed, it gets the bottle. A baby cries and maybe it gets a nurturing mother, a kindness, somebody talking, soothing. So there's so many different influences that happens for us. And whenever we look at maybe noxious events, so maybe things that weren't so good for people, perhaps there wasn't that kind, loving, nurturing family unit there, and they had to grow up and survive through traumatic circumstances. So there's a part of them that was wounded. There's a
Mm.
part of them that didn't feel that love. There's a part of them that wasn't shown how to be out in the world, how to stand up for themselves. There's a part of them that was afraid to trust in their own instincts and their own voice. So they're always asking for permission, or they might be people pleasing, or they might, um, because they don't have that sort of self esteem, they don't believe in themselves. So the parts that's the parts that I'll be trying to talk to, because they're all there within, and they're there to keep them safe. It's not that they want to stop them from doing anything. It's they don't want them to feel the overwhelm. They don't want them to feel that they're not safe.
Yeah.
So I might be talking about, for instance, a saboteur. Might not even realize this, and they hear that voice, that critical voice, that monologue inside, and it's like, oh, you can't do that. What if? And what will people think? Oh, that's not good enough. You'll hear those inner monologues. So it's like that part I would call a saboteur.
Hmm.
And it's like that part, listen to it, listen to what it's saying. And it's actually trying to keep that person safe. So whenever I'm working with that part, I like acknowledge that part and we say, we know that you're listening and we know that you're trying to keep this person safe. And you're doing an amazing job because you've kept them from harm. But now they want to show up. They've got something amazing right now and they want to bring it to the world for its beauty. So I want you to listen and you can be present, you can be there. But I want another part of you who is brave, who can stand up just to be present as well. And we're going to ask you just to step aside just for now, but you can be there. You can listen. And then we're going to call in another part. And whenever we think about that, well, what part of them was able to stand up for themselves in a certain situation? What part of them was maybe able to face a bully, in their lifetime, or a certain situation where they felt proud of themselves? So I would get them to name about 5 different situations where they felt really proud of themselves, so that the saboteur can start to hear, well, actually, this part can, it has got the resources, to stand up. So they talk to each other and they communicate with each other. And then it's like the self is a completely different part to these parts. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, definitely. It's where you feel like you have that warring conversation going on in your mind. It's those different parts really that are kind of communicating. And I think I love that you said that they're all there really. They've all formed to protect you or to
Yeah,
try to protect you. And maybe they're w- they're out of proportion now to what you need, but they have developed over your experiences of life, haven't they?
absolutely. That's exactly that. And it's like, because you're now an adult, they also have to realize that you are an adult because these parts will be much younger than you. But they actually feel as if they're managing your life. They see you as younger than them. which is really,
That's
really
true.
interesting.
It's a kind of like, "I know better. No, no, you shouldn't do this." You
Yeah,
know, it's that kind of voice in your head that's going, "Oh, no, don't take a risk. Don't try this. Don't try something new."
yeah,
Um, and it's that, "Oh, I'm trying to keep you safe and I know better,"
yeah,
feeling, isn't it?
yeah. So what I try to do at that stage is I try to take them on a journey with you, and I want that person to show them that part of them that they are capable and they've got this creativity and they can take charge, and they can take risks because there's nobody there any longer that's going to hurt them or harm them. And that part needs to recognize that. So I do a visualization, with that part, and I'll ask them for to come on that journey. Ask for permission first because they feel as if they're in control. So you have to ask permission. Are you willing to come on a journey? You're with that client, and for that client to show them maybe their lives, maybe they're married, maybe they've children, maybe they've got a good sense of security financially around them, or they're able to create money, bring in money. So I want that part to come along and see how they've been able to create all of this.
Mm.
And that allows that part just to step back and just, which is really, really interesting. We'll ask that part how old they actually are. And then, because perhaps they are a child part, we'll ask them what they would like to do instead. What if they were willing to give up that role of looking after? What would they like to do instead? And sometimes, it's just playing with their friends. Sometimes it's just playing in the garden. Sometimes it's fishing or, playing a sport. So it's so interesting to see. And whenever I work with my clients, they actually feel a sense of empowerment and lighter, and they've got a hold of their child. They understand that part of that saboteur, that's there. So I
Mm.
get them to do a check-in daily so the saboteur knows that they're important and they're being listened to and cared for, but that the adult is now taking charge. So it's absolutely amazing work, to do that.
Yeah, it does. It sounds fascinating, and I can imagine a lot of people are kind of resonating with this idea of this war that's going on in their minds, or maybe not a war, but this kind of
Yeah.
disagreement or these things that are holding you back, like something that maybe is sabotaging yourself, or maybe it's your procrastination, or
Mhm.
um it's that fear, really, isn't it, that's coming up,
Yeah.
and it's around trying to keep you safe. It's not trying to hold you back particularly. It's just, yeah, this is safer. This non-action is safer.
Yeah. And I also feel that there's not just one part. We've got multiple parts, that's always going to be there. So we might capture one, but then we go into a different situation and something else shows up. Because all of a sudden the spotlight might be on you. You might feel empowered to step up and to step into the invisible then in your business. And if you're thinking the spotlight's now on me, well, what do I know? So it's like building an internal team, that will help you move forward. I always feel that, business, we don't have that shop front any longer. And being visible online also creates, it's different narrative, another narrative. So it's like some people are just, they feel so shy, or, they notice that they're not as loud as other people. And most creatives, some creatives are a little bit shyer than others. Um, and they like to be in the background. And even if I think about counselors as well, it's similar. Even though we're there to help people, counselors is also a business. So they also have to be visible online to showcase their business. So I think, jewelers and that sort of trade, you always have to think, well, what do I need to bring forward so that I now can be visible online to showcase, my piece of jewellery, to sell it, to actually make money, because that's actually what my business is.
Mhm.
It might be about the creativity, but it's also because I want to create money. And then you're thinking, well, what's the money story? That's another something that you might have. What did you hear about growing up about money?
Yeah.
And what holds you back there? So that's another story that you might have to listen to different parts of you. The child perhaps grew up in a family that wasn't very affluent. They were poor, and their survival, around that. And money doesn't grow on trees, and all of those old stories. So all of that, the child hears everything. So there's so many parts to the child whenever you think, what has she learnt or he learnt and absorbed, and now what part of them is showing up, around money.
Mhm. Yeah, that is so important. Oh, there's a lot of things to unpack here, but just generally, if someone was trying to work on some of these things for themselves, what kind of process would you suggest for them?
Yeah. So first of all, I would just notice whenever they're creative and they're looking at creating the jewelry, and they'll notice themselves, and this is where you're being mindful. So you might be completely content and happy in that stage. And then if you think, well, I'm now beginning, I've got my pieces, and now I'm ready to move into the next stage. And I would start to notice what's happening in the body. So that's like doing a body scan nearly, because they feel that they've got this created and now they're stuck. So I would say, what's happening in the body? Where are you feeling this at? Most
Mhm.
people feel it in their stomach.
Mm.
So I nearly do like a body scan. I come in through the top of the mind, and I just notice your thoughts. What's happening? What's going on with the stories? And then it perhaps would come down into the throat area. And I notice if there's any tightness or if it feels relaxed. I come across the shoulders again, noticing any tension or if it feels relaxed. Go into the heart space and just looking in and just noticing any emotions right now. Noticing if there's any stories, just noticing any colors, any shapes, any density, how heavy it feels. And if you were actually to take that out and place it in your hand, how much weight would be in your hand with that story. So what's happening? And again, just moving right down through the body into the stomach. If you were to notice how far you had to let it go, how far you letting it go to breathe, just to relax. Again, the tension in your legs, your feet, your hands. So you look at what sort of state am I in? Am I in a state of anxiety? And I'm going into maybe fight, flight, freeze. So this situation right now, what's happening? What am I listening to? Is it feeling scary? What do I need to do to overcome this anxiety I'm feeling? And sometimes it's just noticing adrenaline, cortisol, all of those that will rush into the body. But we're starting to listen to the narrative because it's all about you. You notice the emotions first, you notice the felt sense, and then you have to actually say, what am I thinking?
Mhm.
That's the slowing down, and that's the mindful part. What am I actually thinking right now? And this is the self talk. You have to look at, well, how did I overcome something similar in the past? What did I do? What resources did I use? Who did I speak to? And notice most people, they overestimate the threat and they underestimate their ability to cope with the situation.
Yes.
And I always think, well, if I was a step on the first step of a step ladder, what would be on that step ladder? What resources do I have within, or who can I talk to? What teams, people around me who can help me? So I would bring in that sort of team. And that's a slow process.
Mhm.
Whenever I've stepped on that and I feel quite comfortable, then I'm ready for the next step. What do I need to bring? Okay.
I
So
love
does that
that.
make
I think
sense?
this I've had this it spoken in this way as like we're not the story, but we're the storyteller.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes we can really grab onto that story that we're hearing from the saboteur or the procrastinator or whatever part of ourselves that's coming forward at this moment. And we're grabbing onto it and seeing it as undeniable truth a lot of the time. It's like, well, I can't do this because,
Yeah.
and those stories come in. And I think it, like you say, it's about being mindful and it's about noticing when those stories come up for you, isn't it? And it's about questioning them and just going, actually, is this true? I'm an adult now. Where is this coming from? As all of the things you were just talking about.
Hmm.
It's a very valuable thing to do because otherwise we do just find ourselves stuck, without being able, and we I think we recognize it, we realize that there's something wrong, but sometimes it's hard for us to identify what exactly it is.
Yeah. And whenever you mention the procrastinator, I think that's always because we're afraid of something. You have to look at what am I actually afraid of? And is it the fear of rejection? Is it the fear of not being good enough? Is it the fear that I'd be judged, for? And that's actually the fear that's there. So I'll do everything. It's like if you think back to maybe studying an exam coming up and you do everything. Like I went to university later in life and I'd clean the house before I would sit down to actually do the piece of work I was meant to be doing. So the house was spotless during that whole time. But it was always that procrastination because it was the fear of, for me, it was the fear of not being good enough or not being smart enough to create this piece of work, this written piece of work that I needed. Because I changed careers, as well. I'd been in business for 17 years and I changed careers. So it absolutely is scary. And if I think about listening to lots and lots of different people, everybody has anxiety. Everybody. Everybody feels fear. And it's an innate thing that we all have, of the ability to cope with the situation. We all are built in, with that survival mechanism. We're all inbuilt with that part of our brain, the amygdala, that keeps us safe. It's always on, always switched on. So it's always scanning our environment for danger. So if you think about if it's always switched on, it's only protecting us again from that fear of perhaps being judged, that fear of rejection or not being good enough. So again, we have to think, you know, as an adult, what have I done to whenever, like say whenever I was at school, I didn't work hard enough. I was just loved to play. I was always outside wanting to be outside. Um, And I just didn't sit down. I just couldn't concentrate and want to be in school. So, but I had that for such a long time. And whenever I was in business, I was in my comfort zone. I loved it. I was always confident. But put me back into a place in my 40s, and that child part reared its head. You're not smart enough.
Mm-mm.
So that's the story. So it's saying, well, look at what you've accomplished all of your life. So whenever you think, right now, that procrastinator showing up for you, you have to look at all the different times that you did show up for yourself. And it is a place of fear, and it's only an emotion. Everybody feels it.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you've heard like Cher, the singer.
Mhm.
Every single time she got on stage, she felt sick. And you often hear about actors and actresses, before they get on stage and they have that stage fright. Every single human being will feel that. And it's only a rush, not just with the emotion, but it's also the rush of the adrenaline, the cortisol that's coursing through the body, to either put you again, through that sort of stages of fight and flight and freeze to help you overcome that. But you'll always notice Whenever you're out of that situation, that body completely settles back down again and you return to your normal way of being. So if you
Mm.
notice just in that next stage, what's going on for me? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And then what have I done in the past to overcome this?
Oh, I love those questions. That's brilliant. And I think we also need to remember, and again, I think this is a well-known thing, but that part of our brain is very primitive part of our brain, that it
Yeah,
was designed when we were, especially we'll say in the Western world at least, we're not in mortal danger every day, hopefully.
yeah,
Um, but that part of our brain hasn't evolved past that. So it's has that very extreme reaction, like the stage fright and all of that. So those things, they actually then become like physical symptoms, don't they? That we actually feel ill, that
yeah,
the body is just there trying to, it's just preparing us, isn't it? It's preparing us to be able to deal with whatever the situation is. But sending an email is not a life or death situation. Sometimes the brain can kind of ping up that that's what's happening. And it's just remembering that. It's giving yourself a little bit of grace and and a bit of understanding, I think.
yeah, absolutely. And someday, you just using an analogy of the amygdala, that part of your brain that is primitive, it's like going into an airport. And it's like the amygdala is sort of named as the security guard. So you go through the airport and it's always sort of scanning there and you walk on through and you get to your destination, you go on your holiday and you absolutely love it. So it's like it's just protecting you from any sort of harm and it's doing its job. But somebody says sometimes you can just say to the amygdala, everything's okay, I've got this, I'm safe, go and have a break, go and have a Kit Kat. You can take charge, you can tell it, it's okay. And I think people have to remember that, just say, I'm okay, I can do this. It's like
Mm.
that Nike sign, I can do this, just do it.
Absolutely. Oh, well, that's been really, really helpful. Thank you so much for your time, Alison. If people want to find out more about you and to want to work with you, how do they find out about you?
Okay, so at the moment, I have a website and it's called counsellingwithalison.co.uk. And it's an old website, so at the moment I am updating it, and it probably will be like 2 weeks before it's completely refreshed, renewed.
It'll probably be all new by the time this comes out
Yeah,
anyway, so that's all good.
yeah. So that's what it's just counsellingwithalison.co.uk. Facebook, I'm just there on Facebook as well, same counselling with Alison. So you find me there too. Okay. And again, you look at it, it's like, I know that I'm really good working with people. I love working with people to hear their stories and empower them to help them, create those changes. But things like Facebook, I hate Facebook. you know. So you don't often see me there like too much, but it's something you have to do because again, it's business. You have to think, how am I seen? So you have to use these things. So
Absolutely. I think it's exactly what we were just been talking about. It's one of
exactly.
those things there will always be parts of the work that we do that we love and parts that we do because we know that that's it's part of the job
Important.
kind of
Yeah.
almost, and it's maybe not our main thing. I think that's the thing when we're working just for ourselves rather than in a bigger business where we can maybe be specific and how
Mhm.
like work in one particular area because that's the bit of the business that we like the best. But when we're working for ourselves, at least to start with, we need to do all the jobs.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
It's been really, really interesting conversation. We'll also put all of your details and stuff in the show notes as well, so people can find it there.
Okay,
Brilliant.
lovely.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you.